Can't see on this Hangouts on Air how many of you have been able to make it. I hope some of you did. If not, that's okay. As you well know, this will be on YouTube Live here shortly. Um, we haven't been together for a while. I had a little bit of a hurricane, which was had me evacuated for a little bit. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I had some things that I wanted to share with you, some things that I think would be interesting, fun to look at, and beneficial to us as we finish out the year 2016. Oh my gosh, what a year. I'm sure if you're like me, it's been a bit of a blur. It seems to me like 2016 came and went so fast. There are so many things that as we come to the end of a year and we have a chance to look forward over the horizon at 2017, just ask ourselves the question, how are your bones? That's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to take a little bit of a bone check. So hang in there with me. I'll get this set up and we'll get on our way. And hopefully we'll be done in a short amount of time so you can get on about the things that need to be done and you can be with family and friends. I'm taking off tomorrow. I'm going to be with my kids and grandkids for the next week. So look forward to seeing you back sometime the end of the year maybe or early in the 2017. Can hardly believe I'm saying 2017, but here we go. Every year it seems to have that same feeling on the inside, like, oh my gosh, how did we get here? Anyway, it's time for a bone check. How are your bones? Stick with me while I get this set up and we'll get going right away. Imagine a day filled with bright sunshine, full of expectation. Every day actually should start that way, right? But this day, imagine that you have a visitor you had before, but today it seems different. Today he wants to take you on a ride with him. This is not any ordinary ride. This is a ride on the wind, a ride through the air without a plane. He takes you on this ride to a very interesting location where men have fought battles. It looks like lots of men and lots of battles. And there on the grounds of this very large valley are bones, lots of bones, piles of bones. So many bones that you can imagine that this is a very large army. If you're like me, you've probably seen movies of battlefields where men are wounded and die. And you notice that when they fall, they don't pick where they fall or how they fall. They don't pick who they fall beside or on top of, and they can't choose who falls on top of them either. Battles are like that. They're unpredictable. So how these bones are spread and piled around this very large value has a mystery all its own. So here you are flying around a valley filled with bones. You travel around each side so that you're able to take in the full view of it. It's overwhelming. The sheer numbers are absolutely staggering. And then your visitor turns to you and says, can these bones live again? What a strange question. How on earth are you supposed to know that? What experience do you have or gift would you need to be able to answer that? So you reply, I don't know. Can anyone but God know that answer? And then he tells you something very interesting. He tells you, prophesy to these bones. Well, just a short word about prophecy. There's no real mystery to prophecy. It's really pretty simple. Prophecy is simply speaking what you hear And what you hear has an authority backing it up. You're not meant to give your impression of the words you've heard or to paraphrase the words you've heard. Just hear them and speak them. Hear and speak. You're not required either to make sure that the results are realized. That's the responsibility of the authority who gave the words to you. So all you're required to do in a prophecy is just hear and speak. Well, our story, as you've probably guessed by now, is God visiting Ezekiel. And Ezekiel being taken on an airborne trip around all four sides of a very large valley full of bones. And according to the book of Ezekiel, these bones, hear this, these bones are very, very dry. Now, I did some research about dry bones, and I found out that for bones to completely become very, very dry would take at least 10 years, and in a lot of cases, maybe more. Obviously, depending on the environment they're in, what they're exposed to, but at least 10 years, and depending on environmental, conditions, maybe even more. For the skin and flesh to decay, and for the tendons and the sinew to break down, plus the bones to become very, very dry would take at least a decade. I want you to keep that in mind. Just kind of put yourself there, and these bones have been there drying out for at least a decade. So what we know so far is that a very large army, actually, most likely two armies, because why would a single army kill itself anyway? So I'm just going to assume there's really two armies there, but combined, it's a very large number, is the point being made. And this army or armies are dead and dried up in a very large valley. I want you to think for a minute what isn't said here. First of all, they were fighting about something. We never hear what that is. It's interesting how fighting about something 10 years later ends up being irrelevant. So you wonder why we fight about things so much. I don't know. Think about that. And each one of these members of these armies was obviously somebody's son, maybe somebody's brother, maybe a husband, and possibly even somebody's dad. But here they are, and they've been dead for 10 years at least, and God shows up and asks Ezekiel if these bones, dry bones, can live again. It isn't just a shocking question, but it's actually the last thing a person would expect the God of creation to ask them. Ezekiel says what everyone I know would say. He says, basically, I don't have a clue. And how could I? I'm me, not you, God. This is Jeannie. Jeannie's not God. Jeannie doesn't know whether dead, dry bones can live again. Only you know if they can live again. That much I'm sure of. Now, it's interesting that God doesn't linger on the question that he asked him. He simply starts to provide the solution. So he tells Ezekiel to speak, to prophesy to these dead and very dry bones. And Ezekiel's response is, tell me what to say, and I'll say it. Ezekiel has experienced speaking what he was told to say before. He's done that numerous times before. He has told kings that things that they didn't want to hear. He's told widows things that they welcomed. He's told nations good things and not so good things. And he's spoken to nature, but he had not yet spoken to dead, very dry bones. So God told him what to say, and he said those words. He didn't say his own impression of those words. He didn't paraphrase those words. He just said what he heard. And wow, an oh my gosh moment happened. Bone began to join bone. Now, I think this is one of the most amazing miracles of this story. Think about this for a minute. You've got a very large army lying one on top of the other out in the elements for years. The winds have blown, the rain has come, and other elements have had an effect. And yet the bones that belong together managed to connect again. There isn't a 6'5" man's leg that accidentally connects with a 5'9" man's body. That's pretty miraculous. After 10 years of being blown and washed and weathered, and there's nothing to hold you in a single place, and yet the right bones connect to the right bodies, just because a man heard and spoke. Pretty powerful stuff, if you ask me. And then after the bones connect, then the sinew and the tendons and the ligament start to find their proper place on those bones, and they connect the right things together on the right body, I might add. And then the flesh, the muscle, starts to come back on these bones, all in the right places. And then the skin. I just got to tell you, there's something about when the skin comes back on these bones, because that skin, as it begins to cover these bones, begins to create or recreate the visual that you and I would recognize as a person. That's how we recognize each other, because we got skin on. You take the skin off of me and it'd take you some time to figure out this was Jeannie Cooper. This had to have been amazing for Ezekiel to watch. And it's amazing for you and I to read. But you know what? Without breath, what good is all of this? No matter how miraculous and no matter how mysterious and curious it is for us to watch, these bones without breath, this body, now with the bones and the structure and the muscle, it'll just rot and dry out again without breath. And so God tells Ezekiel, he says to him, Ezekiel, call the north wind and the south wind and the east wind and the west wind. Call the winds and tell them to blow on these bones. To blow on these now recognizable persons. And so when the winds blow on them, breath enters these bones again. You feel that wind? You know, I actually almost can feel that wind as if I'm right there experiencing it. I'm almost in that valley witnessing this extraordinary event. But after the breath enters them, God switches the story. And he says, this is the house of Israel, and they have lost their hope. Really? Really? What a strange time to switch the story. Now, I love hope, and I know that hope matters, but really, right now? I'll get back to the subject of hope in a few minutes. But I want you to think about something. Here's a side thought for you. It's really a rabbit trail, so stay with me on it. I love Hallmark movies, most of them. But I hate how they always end without the wedding. Now, if you've ever watched Hallmark movies, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You follow this fun, heartwarming romance movie as it winds you through the ups and downs of a relationship and ends with you knowing that they got together, but we never get to see their wedding. And it aggravates me no end that they don't actually finish what we are left to believe happened at the end of that Hallmark movie. Well, this scene in the Bible leaves me kind of feeling a bit like the end of a Hallmark movie, because I imagine this very large army, dead and very dried up on a battlefield, and after a decade or more, their bodies are finally formed and whole again, and breath has finally entered them again. But the story can't stop there. Do you think those newly revived men stopped there? No way. I got to tell you, if I was producing this movie, in my movie, here's what would come next. And I think I'm actually pretty accurate on this. Here's what I think happened next. As that guy on the top of the pile begins to move his fingers and his toes for the first time in a decade, and he stretches his limbs and then slowly finds his way upright, his first sight is the pile of men under him. I have to wonder if he even remembers why he was there to begin with. And as the rest of this vast army makes their way up on their feet, do you think they actually pick up their swords and start fighting again? Do you think they even remember what they were fighting about? Listen, in that time frame of history, whole empires would change in 10 years. So what they had fought about was likely not even relevant anymore. 10 years is a long time. And in those times, it actually could even represent about a quarter of somebody's lifespan. Because they usually live to around 40-ish. In their 40s, they didn't live long lives like we do. But remember, this army is made up of somebody's son, maybe somebody's dad, maybe somebody's husband, maybe somebody's brother. And they are from a village, a town, and a family. And in my movie, the first thought they focus on, home. They head home. Whether it's near or far, they head home. Now, the next, and I think the most riveting moment in my movie, is the moment that they show up at the entrance to their village or their town. And people see them for the first time. Because remember, their skin's back on and they've got breath. Their bones are together, their tendons and ligaments and flesh is all back on, all the sinews back where it's supposed to be, and breath has entered them, and they are, skin is on them, and you know who they are. Oh my gosh. I can just imagine the look on the villagers' faces as they make their way into town for the first time in at least a decade. If they left a wife there, who knows but what she's remarried. In those days, it could actually have been one of his own brothers. Maybe she even has kids by a new husband. Maybe this man who's returning actually has a child he's never met. Now, no one could blame this village and his family for moving on after 10 years, but in my movie, these are real issues. If you're going to have a very large army that has been dead and dried up and withered for 10 years or more, and you restore them and put their skin back on and breathe breath into them, and they're walking, living human beings again. In my movie, these are real issues. Because you see, the original question, way back there in the beginning, that God asked Ezekiel becomes very important in my movie. The original question was not, can these bones connect again? No. And it was not, can these bones hold flesh again? And it was not, can these bones hold skin again? It wasn't even, can these bones breathe again? The question was, can these bones live again? Now, having been through a very bone drying experience, can they live again? Can they flourish and thrive again? The word live also means to flourish and to thrive again. Now, if you've been through bone drying experiences, you know very well that issues that are left unresolved will eat away at the very essence of who you are or who you once were. It will leave you with all the outward signs of life, but no living. It may leave you breathing and functioning, but not flourishing, not thriving. I've been through my own bone drying experiences, and I know firsthand how easy it would be to stay dead on the inside, to stay stuck in the valley where I fell. And with each attempt to get back to something familiar, be faced with the challenge to live and to flourish, not just exist. Most of you know my husband passed away 3 years ago, and each new day, even though I still remember him and I love him, and I don't take those 36 years for granted, each day I take a new step toward forward, moving forward. I can barely imagine what my life will be like after 10 years. But I can tell you that if I tried to make each day identical to 3 years ago, my hope and my expectation would eventually fade and die. Because you see, I cannot make my life identical to 3 years ago, no matter how hard I try. It's not possible. So at this point, I want us to go back to where God switched the story and started talking about dry bones being about losing hope. Did you notice God did that? He did this whole story about these dry bones and can they live again? Not can they breathe again, not can they have skin again, but can they live again? After they're breathing, can they actually live? And he connects it to losing hope. He connects dry bones to losing hope. I told you we were going to check our bones. So ask yourself the question, what does hope have to do with living again? What does hope have to do with flourishing and thriving again? You know, these are questions that we might want to answer. I love hope. I know that it is absolutely central to a healthy life. I know that without hope, we wither. And God took the time to tell us this story about a valley of very dry bones being about life without hope. So we need to look at hope and dry bones. There's this interesting proverb that says this: a merry heart does good like a medicine, but a broken spirit, here it is, dries up the bone. Oh, that's interesting. A broken spirit will dry out your bones from the inside out. The outside circumstances that broke that spirit may have changed and improved, but if that broken spirit isn't remedied, it'll dry the bones out from the inside. It'll be like having your bones connected, your sinew and your tissue and your skin on, and your breath in you, but not living. The simple truth is, experiences left unresolved will eventually break your spirit and dry your bones, as dry as the men in that valley. I want you to understand something. Please understand that resolution isn't about what you do about it. It's more about who you trust. Resolution isn't about a new list on your refrigerator of I've got to do this in order to resolve this. No, 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 no. No. It's about who you trust. Bone drying experiences can be short-term events like the unexpected loss of a member of your family, or they can be long drawn-out experiences like a loveless marriage or a wearying friendship. But experiences that break your spirit will dry out your bones if you don't remedy it. And the remedy is about who you trust. What is it that breaks your spirit? What is it that tethers or ties down your hope to the fears and the faults and the failures of the past? What is that in your life? I have to ask the question, are you without remedy for dry bones? Well, that's the whole question that's asked and answered in our story. And the answer is no, you are not without remedy. Emphatically, no, you're not without remedy. You are not without remedy. There is remedy for you. The question to you is, will you live again? Will you thrive again? Will you flourish again? Just like these men. Think about this, returning home to people in towns that have moved on already. And they had to choose to live again anyway. Will you live again? You might do things that make you feel reconnected and to feel like you can take a deep breath again. But the question to you in this lesson tonight is, in spite of what Reality is now. Will you live again? I'm going to tell you how to do that here in a few minutes. It's going to sound so simplistic that when you first hear it, you're going to say, I was hoping for something a little deeper. Trust me. You're just going to have to trust me on this one in the beginning, because when it finally works its way down in under your skin and it gets a hold of you, it will so transform your life, you'll wonder how you missed it. You know, I started writing this chapter around October 5th of this year. I worked on it for a couple of days before we around here started hearing about a hurricane called Matthew. Over the next few days, my area went under a mandatory evacuation. Matthew was said to be coming up the coast and likely to hit my neighborhood. Now, I have to tell you that back when I was looking at building or buying here on this barrier island, I considered the weather habits of the northeast coast of Florida. I also considered the west coast of Florida, but I ruled that out because they had consistently too many storms for my comfort. And interior Florida didn't appeal to me at all because I didn't need to move to Florida to sweat. I could do that up in Atlanta. So the coast was a very important part of my decision to move here. So when I found my lot here and then built this house, I felt pretty sure I had made the right decision. Think about this. I was putting everything that Biff and I had worked for over 36 years for into this house so it could grow in value, and then I'd leave it to my kids. I knew St. Augustine had been here successfully for 451 years this year. That's a pretty good track record. And some of the homes on this barrier island have been here 50, 60, and 70 years. So as I evacuated, I prayed a blessing over my little beach house and I left for my sister. While I was over there, over the next few days, we watched Matthew make its way up the coastline and finally hit my neighborhood Friday night at high tide. We could see on the TV that St. Augustine was flooded with 4 to 5 feet of water from the storm surge, but my area wasn't on the news yet. Neighbors who had stayed behind and weathered the storm here, the next day started posting videos and pictures on our community website as they were able to get out and about. The pictures were devastating. Homes were underwater. Damage was in the billions along the beachfront, less than a block from my home. I couldn't see my house on any of those videos. And finally, my neighbors next door over here came home, got back to their house, and then came next door and did a walk around my house. And as far as they could tell, I was okay. They couldn't get inside to check to be sure there was no water intrusion, but outside looked good. I was gone for a total of 4 days. During that time, though, honestly, all kinds of thoughts found their way into my mind, because there were a number of possibilities facing me as I left my sisters to head back home. Was the stress of this and living with this just too much to live with? Were my walks on the beach really that important? Would this storm affect my property value? Now, I found out several weeks later that my property value will likely go up, strangely enough. According to the county appraiser that was here at my house 2 or 3 weeks ago, he said that because I had no flooding and no wind damage, my property will be a part of a very limited group on this island with no damage on the county record. And he said that's going to make this group of homes very sought after if I would ever decide to sell, because there will be no record in the county records of me having had any problem during Hurricane Matthew. On the last Sunday that I was at my sister's house, I decided to stay home to continue working on this chapter while they all went to church. And as I wrote, this very same question that I'm asking you tonight was one that I needed to answer myself. Could this place, me in this place, me with now Matthew experience. Could I live here again? Could I flourish and feel the same as I did before Matthew? Could I feel that same way after Matthew? Was this going to be a bone-drying, spirit-breaking experience for me? And the answer for me was quick and very certain. No, it's not going to be a bone-drying, spirit-breaking experience with me. But it could have been. There's many people here in my neighborhood, they're not going to be able to rebuild their homes because the storm took the dunes right out from under their homes. Some of them are sitting 8 feet over the dunes. They have nothing underneath them. There's nothing to rebuild on. So many of them are going to get a check from the insurance company with a nice little comment that says, here, go build somewhere else. Some of the people interior, because our little barrier island here is only 7 blocks wide. Almost at its widest, it's only 7 blocks wide. There's a river there and there's an ocean right there. And some of the people interior who were flooded because of the storm surge that came up the river, what it's going to cost them to rebuild is, in some cases, just cost prohibitive. But according to the St. Augustine city manager, this was the first time in 150 years that a storm like this has hit here. So here's how I decided to answer this question. I decided, wow, my little beach house just passed the 150-year storm test. Am I smarter about storm preparation coming out of this experience? Sure I am. Am I personally damaged inside or out? No. Will I flourish again here? Will I sleep like a baby in my little beach house here, knowing that majestic but very powerful ocean is just a short 2 minutes from me over there? Absolutely. I've slept like a baby every day I've been home. I've seen homes that I actually put offers in on when I was looking for a home and they're badly damaged. It's almost caught my breath a couple of times when I see what I could have been dealing with. But when I threaded the needle and built this home, it ended up being in the perfect place to weather this storm. It was high and dry from flooding, and it was protected from the winds on the east. I'm going to tell you something. I don't take this amazing grace lightly, but I flourish in it. I thrive in it. I want you to know that after the bone-drying, spirit-breaking experiences you've endured, you can flourish again. The Bible tells us that every single thing that you need for life, and that word life refers to this life we're living here on earth, every single thing that you need for life, this life I'm living, and everything you need for godliness, that's your God life, has been given to you in Christ by way of Calvary. Everything. That is your 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3 guarantee. You might not have tapped into it yet, but I want you to know that it's in the bank for you. It's there. It's paid for. It's been freely given to you. And if I could urge you to do one thing, I would urge you to freely receive it. Everything that you need to face, go through, and flourish on the other side of everything that comes your way is already in the bank for you. It's been paid for. It's been freely given to you. And the only thing required of you is that you receive it in the same manner in which it's been given. Freely. That word freely means as at no cost to you and as much of it as you want. Now, Ezekiel and his neighbors, they didn't have this gospel, which is grace, but the question was asked and its answer were still available to them. Yes, you can live. Yes, you can flourish. Yes, you can thrive after bone drying, spirit breaking events. There's some real power in the promise that's in Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And it's this. The promise is that no matter what comes your way, no matter what kind of horrible happens, God says to you, I will take stuff. I will take your horrible and I will make it all work together for your good if you just trust me. Horrible happens. Stuff happens. But stuff that happens doesn't define you. It's simply the moment when who you trust really matters. And that's a defining moment. The defining moment when you realize, when you have an aha moment, that who you trust is all that really matters. Now, I want you to notice that I didn't say how much you trust matters or what kind of trust you have matters. Absolutely not. What I said was who you trust matters. That's all. Who you trust. The rest of it is his job. Oh my gosh. Snap, snap. Grace allowed to fully function in your life. It keeps new shackles from forming on your heart, even as life throws hardballs at you. Please know that life will throw you hardballs. So I say swing. Swing at life's hardballs. Swing and knock them right out of the park. Now I'm going to tell you how to master your swing. You want a little insight? You want a little secret? The way to master your swing at hitting hard balls that life throws you right out of the park, it's resting. By resting in being loved, I urge you to get your master's degree in being loved. I encourage you to get your doctorate in being loved. Remember, he who loves you did so before you ever knew his name. And he watches over you, and he never sleeps nor slumbers. Can these dry bones live again? Can your dry bones live again? Absolutely. They can thrive and flourish again in Christ. And because of his love for us, we are never without hope. I want to reconnect hope, losing hope, lost hope, and dry bones. Remember, God's the one who made that connection. He told the whole story. He flew Ezekiel all around a very large valley and showed him a very large army of dry bones and said to him, this is the house of Israel, and they've lost their hope. He's the one who connected dry bones and lost hope. We're never without hope. You know why? You know why hope is alive and well in you? You might not have tapped into it for a while because the storms of your own life, the hurricanes of your own relationships, the floods of your own emotions may have kept you far, far away from your bank of hope. But it's there. It's there. It's full. It's on demand. All you have to do is rest and receive. The rest is God's responsibility. I'll tell you where I get this from. I get it from Romans chapter 5. Because in Romans chapter 5, it assures you and I that as his love for us, as God's love for us, finds its way into every nook and cranny of your heart, into every known and unknown corner of your heart, by the Holy Spirit, as that love for you finds its way and fills every nook and cranny of your heart, you'll find a hope that will never fail. Hope that will never leave you feeling vulnerable and ashamed. You might go through circumstances that leave you feeling vulnerable and ashamed. Stuff happens. Horrible happens. Hurricanes come. Hurricanes go. Floods rise. Flood waters go. But love never fails. And the love that God has for you establishes your heart. It anchors your heart in hope. And life's stuff fails to break your spirit and dry out your bones. I didn't say to you that bone drying, spirit breaking experiences might not happen. What I said to you is your bones can live again. You don't have to be those experiences. You don't have to stay dead on the valley floor where you fell. You can get reconnected. You can get recognizable again. You can become a breathing, functioning person again. If you want to thrive, if you want to flourish, if you want to live again, I tell you, rest is the key. Learning to rest in being loved. I am love. I am Jeannie Cooper that Jesus loves. That is who I am. I don't know the answer to all the peculiar things that happen. I didn't have the answer to Matthew. Of course I wanted Matthew to move on. I wanted Matthew to just go on out to sea. Matthew didn't go out to sea. But I am right here in this little house that the only thing that I lost was a couple of little shrubs out front that I planted back in the fall, in the early fall. They're just not as happy as they were, but they'll come back. My next door neighbor's been here 38 years, and she said they'll come back in the spring. I'm here to tell you we are never without hope. We are never without hope because we are never without love. We might not be realizing the full benefit of being loved, but we're never without love. And His love being shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost anchors our heart in hope. And life stuff then is unsuccessful at breaking our spirit and drying out our bones. Bone checkup. If your spirit seems broken and your bones feel dry, don't look for remedies outside of God's love for you. Don't try to fix your spirit and hydrate your bones. Let the love that God has for you bind up your brokenness and breathe regenerating life into your bones. How are your bones? Snap, snap. Unshackled grace restores your soul. I hope you have a wonderful, Merry Christmas. I hope that your New Year starts with a bang and a shout. I hope that you discover the squeals of delight that God so looks forward to hearing from you. I just happen to think that He delights in hearing me squeal in delight. I hope you have a lot of squealing going on in 2017. I hope that you won't become comfortable on the valley where you fell. I hope that you'll let God breathe into you His breath and not only restore your function, but restore your flourishing. He'll do it, and you'll be a representation, a gift to the rest of the world for the rest of your life here if you can get your master's degree in being loved. I know everybody wants to focus on how much we love God. We only love Him, 1 John 4, we only love Him because He first loved us. You loving God is a direct, proportional response to how much you receive being loved. So just why not just Go ahead and open the floodgates. Speaking of floods, go ahead and open the floodgates and let it all in. Let it just find its way into everywhere. And you will become so transformed as His love for you renews the way you think, that it'll be transformational as caterpillar to butterfly. I can't wait to see you in the new year. God bless you. God love you. Enjoy your family. Enjoy Christmas. And if you don't have anybody to be with this Christmas, find somebody who has nobody and take them out to dinner. Love being with you. Have a great night.